and welcome back to Lightworker Training. My name is Tatiana, and I'm so grateful to be joining with you today. And our topic of today's video is Foundations of Healing Key Points. So basically, I just want to do a little review today of the kinds of things that we looked at in this chapter on the foundations of healing, because, well, I was gonna say this is gonna be our last video before we jump into the mental stuff. And that's true, it is, but in the future, you might look at this and go, wait a minute, there's other videos that I might add other videos, this happens with my work. I've been teaching this course for many years now, and I just keep adding more and more, keeps growing. So yeah, I'm sure that'll happen with this too. And that's cool, just keep adding as we go. So what we really need to know about the foundations of healing and these principles, we've been working a lot with the body and trauma and how trauma shows up in the body. So it's really important, and I talked about this in the video of Act Like You Know. It's really important that we're not just like mentally understanding these things or just feeling in our hearts like, oh yeah, that's correct. Yes, we have to actually act on things. This is how we heal not just the body, but this is how we create everything in the world of form. If we want to truly influence the field of creation and see what we would like to see in the world and in our lives, right? We have to act. It's not enough to intellectually or emotionally understand something. We need to act like we know, okay? So we need to act like we know that we are the power and the presence of love. So even if it feels like you gotta fake it till you make it, you're like, well, I don't feel very powerful or loving or present. Hey, that's okay. You can just start with some deep breaths and like, well, you know what? I feel like shit. I feel like a total loser, but I'm showing up. You know what? You having the willingness to show up in that moment is what's healing. What is healing? We started this chapter with the question, what is healing? That's it. You have to show up. When you show up, that's loving, right? So we talked about the importance of aligning ourselves with the energy of love, the energy of source, higher self, the truth, beauty, freedom, all of these things that we desire, right? They're all in that frequency range, right? Very high vibrational range. So even if you're not feeling high vibe, you can make that choice to shift over into that. And you could even just think about it as like, okay, I'm lining it up. I don't feel shit, but but believe me, if you do this experiment, you're going to see, and you can experiment with the words or the actions that create that feeling and the outcome that you'd like. But the most important thing is your willingness to show up and to act, take some kind of action, just even if it's like, all right, I'm going to take one deep breath and I'm just going to say, I am aligned with my higher self. Even if I don't believe it, I don't have to believe it. I'm willing to receive it. And that's enough. This might be a little prayer like that. That's healing. And once you get in that vibe, chances are it's going to feel pretty good and you might want to keep going. The hardest part is to make that choice to shift from, a lower vibrational state to a higher one. That's where the rubber hits the road, and it can sometimes feel like you're being ripped in half. And we're going to get a lot into that splitting in the next chapter. But just know that you can act like you know that you are the power and the presence of love, and that is healing. Anything else that comes after that, it's all just forms. What's really healing is the energy underneath the forms, right? That's what we want to focus on. What's underneath the forms? It's not about the forms. Forms can shapeshift. It's about the energy underneath the forms, right? So another foundational piece to please understand is that you create the space of healing. So whatever the healing space is, that sanctuary space, you create it. You create it in your own energy field, and that shifts everything. So you're creating the space of healing, and one of the requirements is to take full responsibility for your energy field, right? So you might feel overwhelmed by that, but just start chipping away. Take responsibility for this, responsibility for that. Eventually, you will have to take responsibility for every thought, feeling, physical sensation, all of the energy in your field, your consciousness. You're going to have to take responsibility for all of it if you really want to heal everything and be free, and if you want to achieve self-mastery. This is what it takes. It takes that alignment, and it takes you taking responsibility. That's loving. We've been talking in this chapter about reparenting the inner child, rewriting the trauma-based programs, and this is how we do it. We take responsibility and say, you know what? I didn't get some good authority figures back in the day. I am now taking responsibility. I'm going to be the positive role model for my inner child. I'm going to be the non-toxic, but the healthy authority figure, right? It's so important. If it feels overwhelming, just chunk it down one piece at a time. Eventually, we got to do it all. It doesn't really matter what lesson or what order. Eventually, we're going to have to do every single lesson in the book. All right. So another key point on this foundations piece is this importance of getting still. So we talked about this present moment awareness exercise. When you get still and notice, this is a game changer. So we tend to be just like, oh, do, or think, or like, oh, feeling all these things. Okay, sometimes we need to just stop and take a breath and shift. It's challenging, but we have to break the pattern. We have to make that shift from one state of being to another. There's a lot of hacks, there's a lot of techniques, there's a lot of ways of doing it. It doesn't matter how you do it. You do what works for you in that moment. So one technique might work in one moment, but it might not be appropriate or really work that well in another situation. Luckily, we're infinitely creative. We can make shit up in the moment. And until you feel really strong with just making shit up in the moment, you could borrow some of my ideas. That's why I'm offering well, they're not mine. I mean, I didn't make any of this stuff up. This is all just stuff that's out there to be discovered, Even the things that we appear to discover in our inner work, um, they're truths that have always been there. So the truth is it's written on everything in creation, and all that is required is for us to be willing to receive it, to receive that truth, that knowledge that's there everywhere all the time. Okay, so when we get still and we tune in, we start to notice, even noticing, what does it feel like in the breath? What am I feeling in my body now? You can shift energy so quickly. It's like slow down to speed up. It's like, just take that minute, take that second to slow down and to shift, and you will actually save yourself so much time and energy just spinning out, spinning out, spinning out on all of this stuff. Just stop, take a breath, break out of that pattern, and then you're going to be able to shift energy, move energy, clear energy, call yourself back, return stuff that's not yours. You'll be able to do that very, very quickly. Very, very, very hard. I'm not going to say totally impossible. Very hard to do that if you don't get present. I mean, have I ever been able to do that without getting present? Not really, but maybe you can. Wouldn't that be fantastic? Just be able to be crazy and still heal stuff. All right. So, another key point to understand is that you can practice in any circumstance. So, some circumstances are going to feel a lot easier and more conducive to healing, but your healing opportunities, shall we say, are vast in this realm. We got healing opportunities all over the place because shit's crazy. So, lots of opportunities to bring our embodied presence into any and all aspects of our lives. Like I said, eventually we will have to be able to apply it in any and all circumstances. So if you have a belief that something is more difficult than another thing, that there's some order of difficulty or order of significance, um, that might be a not very helpful belief. Check it out. Because as an infinite being, do you believe in orders of difficulty? So we might have had an experience in the past of orders of difficulties, but we can always say, until now. That has been my experience until now. Now I'm curious, what else is possible? What if this could be so easy? So if we're putting our energy and our belief and our intention into this thought that, oh, that's really hard, do you think that's going to make it easier? Now, not to invalidate our feelings or our past experience. Hey, that happened. That happened. It felt like that. You felt like that. That's a thing. Hey, love it up, love yourself up. Don't gaslight yourself, but be real. Do you want to keep creating that? Okay. So where was I? You can practice in any circumstance. So light work isn't just something that happens in a session or, on a Sunday at noon. Sunday at noon's a great time to practice if you want. Light work is ultimately a way of life. It's, choosing to align yourself with, like I said, light, love, truth, beauty, freedom, all of these things that are our natural states of being. So we can align with what's real, or we can align with some bullshit, and we can experience what it is to put energy into a lie of separation, or we could experience the joy of the truth of ourselves, right? We have that free will choice. So choosing to bring the truth of ourselves to everything in our lives is it's a life's work. It's a way of life, and it is the way of life, because the other thing is actually the way of death. It's like, what's being created over there? If we are like infinite, we are life, we are infinite life, we are spirit, we are a part of that, then what's the opposite? Death, right? I don't just mean like a shape shifting of forms. Um, I mean like a what's the word I'm looking for? It's like a falling, nothing can ever really be separated from source. But the way I see it, it's like falling away, falling away, falling away from the truth of being, until it's like it actually dissolves back into source. But it's not through a process of growing and learning and ascension. It's through a process of almost like a decay, like a falling, like a fall, um, versus a falling down and decomposing, versus rising up and growing. And we have that choice. And sometimes some people say like, well, we don't ever totally like decay into just space dust or whatever. We keep going as many times as it takes until we learn our lessons. And maybe that's true. I don't claim to understand how everything in reality works, especially in this world where I feel a little bit, you know, disconnected, frankly, oftentimes with reality because it's so crazy here. But that's just kind of what it looks like to me. I mean, obviously, we can't ever be separated in reality, but we can have an experience of ultimate death and separation. Now, did it really happen or not? Can we really die? Depends on what you define as death, I guess. But anyway, one way is the way of life and growth and ascension. The other way is the way of death, chaos, and fall system. Parasitic kind of system, right? All right, so that was, wow, that was kind of a tangent there. But suffice it to say, you can practice in any circumstance. And I invite you to just borrow that bold statement and test it out, see what you find. So this is the last point I'll make on this. I'm going to try to keep this one short. Your loving presence heals unresolved trauma. So if you have the intention and the will, the desire, and you act on it, and you show up, your loving presence shows up, you will heal unresolved trauma. But if you don't, you will not heal unresolved trauma. Your loving presence is what heals unresolved trauma. You're not going to heal it because you took this plant medicine, or somebody led you through a process, or you had some light therapy or something. Right? Now those things can help, but the only reason why they do anything is because you showed up for it. Your loving presence showed up for it. You're putting your energy into those things, and they will work for a time. But then eventually, all of these external things are going to stop working, because you need to realize you're the one who's making it work. So if you keep using that crutch when really your leg is already healed, God's going to come and take that crutch away, so that you can realize, like, oh, wow, my leg is healed. So your loving presence heals unresolved trauma. And it has to be you. It's an inside job. And that's why I devoted a few videos to working with unresolved trauma and doing the inner world work. It's so key. It's so key. And I know it's really hard to go there when you first start. And there's all this chatter of the toxic inner critic jerk who's like, yeah, oh, that's so, oh, inner child. That's so like, just like all these like feelings and judgments about inner child work. That's so cheesy. Who the fuck even is that thinking that thought? Do you think that about your inner child? No, you're a loving person. You wouldn't be like, ew, gross, and a child. Like, no, that's that inner critic who doesn't want you to do that. Who does it benefit for you to not do inner child work? Who does it benefit for you to not work with your inner critic? Hmm. Right? Who benefits from these judgments, foregone conclusions? Check it out. So your loving presence heals unresolved trauma, and that's important. Why? Because unresolved trauma is almost always the root cause of all of the symptoms that we see manifested. When you start peeling back those layers, there's gonna be some kind of old trauma at the foundation. I'd say 9.99 times out of 10. Not every time, but often. And this, of course, is if it's even yours. Because most of the symptoms are not. Okay, so here's the graph of all of the symptoms, from 0 to infinity, however many symptoms, right? Here's all of the symptoms. Now, how many of them are likely to be yours? Not very many. So we'll just say we sent all that back, right? So now we've got a new scale. These are just the symptoms that are actually yours. How many of those are going to have old trauma at the foundation of them? Okay, here was my maximum, and then here's what I'm reading. Almost max, almost max. Okay, that's just my scan on it. You can do your own scan on it, see what you find out. And, it's always case by case basis. This is just a gross generality. But check it out. The reason why I'm spending time talking about unresolved trauma is because it's important. And really, anytime we start something new, like it's almost like being a new parent. You might feel a little bit like, oh God, do I even want to do this? Is this really for me? What if I suck? What if I screw up this kid's life? I got news for you. Some crappy parents probably already screwed up your inner child's life. And so you get to actually do better, and you will do better because you are willing to show up as the power and the presence of love. And how many people are willing to do that? Sadly, not many, but hopefully more and more each day as we, wake up, shine our light. Hey, maybe we'll activate a few folks. Maybe we'll give someone else the courage to step into their power. So I hope this has been helpful. Next time on Lightworker Training, we're going to be getting into the mental zone and talking about the mind. So this is so exciting because the mind, I mean, it's the causal level. We're going to talk about how we can make these top-down shifts that move stuff very quickly. So I look forward to sharing that with you, and I'll see you next time on Lightworker Training. Bye for now.